The Other Bennet Sister never gave Mary Bennett a love rival. Mr. Hayward meets Mary, gets to know her, and gradually falls in love with the person she becomes. So the emotional question in that story was never whether she could compete with another woman, but whether she could finally see herself clearly enough to be loved without distortion. Then the television series introduces Miss Baxter, and with that single addition, the question quietly shifts. It is no longer simply who is Mary, but instead becomes, is Mary better than the alternative? The moment Miss Baxter enters the story, a different narrative structure begins to form. She is attractive, socially accomplished, and presented as exactly the kind of woman someone like Hayward might be expected to choose in a conventional romantic arc. From that point on, the comparison is no longer incidental, but structural. The audience is invited to evaluate two women against each other and wait for a kind of verdict, as if Mary's value needs to be confirmed through contrast. In this logic, Mary's worth no longer rests entirely in who she is becoming. Instead, it starts to depend on who she replaces. Even Hayward's love shifts slightly in meaning, because it stops functioning only as recognition of her character and begins to read as proof that she ranked higher than someone else. This is where Austen becomes interesting, because she often introduces women who, on the surface, look like better matches according to social expectations, but they rarely function as true romantic rivals in the modern sense. Take Lucy Steele, for example. Edward Ferrars is never truly torn between Lucy and Eleanor, because his struggle is not romantic indecision, but moral obligation.
What a pleasure to see you.
Miss Dashwood, how can I...
You know Miss Steele, of course.
Indeed. How do you do, Miss Steele?
He remains engaged to Lucy because he believes a promise, even a mistaken one, must still be honored. When Lucy eventually leaves him for Robert Ferrars, Austen makes it clear where her priorities were all along. Her loyalty was never to Edward, but to advantage. Eleanor never really defeats Lucy. Instead, the obstacle simply dissolves.
I received a letter from Miss Steele, Mrs. Ferrars, I should say, communicating to me the transfer of her affections to my brother Robert. It seems they were much thrown together in...
Caroline Bingley offers another example. She believes herself to be Elizabeth's rival, and on paper she has every qualification society values: wealth, elegance, education, and impeccable connections.
But all young ladies are accomplished. They sing, they draw, they dance, speak French and German.
No woman can be really esteemed accomplished who does not also possess a certain something in her air, in the manner of walking, in the tone of her voice, her address and expressions.
She even pursues Darcy openly, but Darcy never seriously considers her, not even for a moment. Caroline's role is not to prove Elizabeth superior, but to show that Darcy's choice cannot be explained through social ranking alone. Even Emma follows a similar pattern. Emma briefly imagines Jane Fairfax as a rival for Mr. Knightley's attention, and the reader is invited to wonder about it alongside her. But Austen never turns Jane into a real romantic competitor. Instead, the misunderstanding exists to reveal Emma's own feelings, rather than to stage a genuine contest between two women. Again and again, Austen resists making female worth dependent on outperforming another woman.
Mr. Bennet, have you heard? Netherfield Park is let at last.
This is why the change matters. Mary Bennett has spent her entire life inside a competition she never agreed to enter. She is not the beauty, not the flirt, and not the favorite daughter. And she grows up constantly measuring herself against sisters who seem to possess everything she lacks. One of the novel's quiet achievements is allowing Mary to step outside that system entirely. Her confidence does not come from winning against others, but from realizing that her value was never meant to be confirmed through comparison in the first place. The series risks placing her back inside the very structure she was moving away from. Now the emotional reward no longer comes simply from being seen, it comes from someone else not being chosen. And for a character whose deepest wound is being measured and found wanting, the resolution becomes being measured again, but finally judged sufficient. That creates a very different emotional argument.
I was just about to read something to Miss Bennett that made me think of her this morning.
It made you think of Miss Bennett?
Yes, exactly.
Perhaps every television adaptation feels pressure to create clearer dramatic tension, and a love rival is one of the simplest ways to achieve that. But Austen rarely needed one. Her heroines are not validated by defeating other women. Instead, so-called rivals often exist to reveal something about the hero's values, his misunderstandings, and what he eventually learns to see more clearly. Mary Bennett's story was never meant to end with winning a contest. It was meant to end with no longer believing she had to compete at all. Tell me in the comments, do you think adding Miss Baxter strengthens the romance, or does it quietly change what Mary's story is actually about? I'm Sana. This is Monica's Pie. The story's never just the story.